Jimmy is so well-intended, guys. Jimmy's not intentionally screwing this up. Jimmy wants to win more than anybody because his name is the one getting slandered and thrown through the mud here. I think Jimmy, finally, the clarity has hit him. Well, we were not bad when Dorsey was making the picks. And when the new King Scout came in and started telling everybody who we were going to draft, we went in the tank. And last year, I empowered Andrew. This is your draft. Make it a good one.
Yeah.
And I know you disagree with that, Bull, but and I don't know that we'll ever find out.
We won't. But to me, that just puts all the blame on Di Podesta, and that would be great if that were the case. Well, but I just don't buy that.
I think he's I've sat here in this chair for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I've said outside of Jimmy Haslam, the single biggest person to blame for this train wreck is the boogeyman. We named him the boogeyman because we don't know what he does.
I just think Andrew Berry's as much to blame as
John Harbaugh won't even take a phone call from Cleveland. Not a meeting, not an interview, not even a conversation. And if you've been paying attention to what's happening behind the scenes, you already know exactly why. This isn't just another coaching candidate passing on a job. This is a Hall of Fame level coach looking at the Cleveland Browns situation and saying I'm good before anyone could even finish the pitch. And the whispers coming out of NFL circles, they all point to the same thing. The Shedeur Sanders question. Let's be real for a second. When the Miami Dolphins are willing to fire Mike McDaniel, a coach who made Tua Tagovailoa look like an MVP candidate, just to have a conversation with Harbaugh, that tells you everything about how this coaching carousel really works. When the New York Giants are preparing the red carpet treatment before their current situation is even settled, you know something major is happening. But Cleveland can't even get Harbaugh to return a text. And that gap, that massive difference in how teams are being treated by the same coaching candidate, is screaming something that nobody in the media wants to say out loud. From what we've seen reported by multiple analysts and insiders, teams with sitting head coaches were already making contact with John Harbaugh. Not after they fired their guy, before. That's how desperate franchises are to land a coach of his caliber. The Dolphins didn't just casually reach out. According to what's been discussed on major sports shows, they had full conversations. They checked the temperature. They got enough positive feedback that they felt confident pulling the trigger on McDaniel. Think about what that means. A team fired a coach who put up 70 points in a game, who had one of the most explosive offenses in football because they knew they had a real shot at Harbaugh. Now compare that to Cleveland. Cleveland reached out. Cleveland expressed interest. Cleveland probably offered to make Harbaugh one of the highest paid coaches in the league. And from everything we're hearing through media reports and analyst breakdowns, Harbaugh's response was basically nah. No interview, no visit, no formal conversation. Just a polite decline before things could even get started. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because if you look at the timeline of how this all unfolded, there's a pattern that's hard to ignore. Every elite coaching candidate who's approached Cleveland has to answer the same fundamental question. Can you build a winning team around Shedeur Sanders as your franchise quarterback? And based on the reactions we're seeing, based on who's taking meetings and who's ghosting the organization, it sure looks like some of these candidates are saying no before they even hear the full pitch. Let me walk you through what the media has been reporting because the details here matter. Adam Schefter went on a major sports show and mentioned that multiple teams with active head coaches were contacting Harbaugh. That's not normal. That's teams taking massive risks, potentially tampering because they believe landing Harbaugh is worth any price. The Dolphins made their move. The Giants are positioning themselves. Other franchises with established quarterbacks are making calls. And then there's Cleveland, sitting on the outside looking in. Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns extensively, broke down what's really happening in a radio interview that's been making rounds. She said something that should make every Browns fan uncomfortable. She mentioned that when you get the sense a candidate might have something hot going in another city, you don't want to be publicly turned down by multiple people. Translation: the Browns already know Harbaugh doesn't want the job. They're not even going to formally offer him an interview because they don't want the embarrassment of being rejected in public. That's not speculation. That's a reporter who covers this team explaining the reality of the situation. She went on to say that you don't want your coaching vacancy to look like nobody wants the job. And there it is. That's the real crisis Cleveland is facing right now. It's not that they can't hire a coach, it's that they can't attract the elite difference makers. The guys who turn franchises around. The coaches with proven track records and Super Bowl rings. Those guys are looking at Cleveland and apparently seeing more red flags than opportunities. So what's driving this? From the media discussions and insider commentary we've seen, it comes down to a few major factors. You've got an owner in Jimmy Haslam who has cycled through more coaches than almost any franchise in modern NFL history. You've got a front office that made what many consider the worst trade in league history to acquire Deshaun Watson. You've got a quarterback situation that's been a complete mess for years. And you've got Shedeur Sanders, a young quarterback who comes with significant media attention, family dynamics, and external pressure that most rookies don't deal with. If you're John Harbaugh, a coach who's built a legendary career in Baltimore, who's won a Super Bowl, who's consistently competitive year after year, why would you leave that stability to walk into Cleveland's chaos? Based on what analysts are saying, the answer seems to be you wouldn't. Not when you have options in Miami with better weather and organizational stability. Not when you have the Giants with their historic franchise and connections to your family. Not when multiple other opportunities exist that don't require you to completely overhaul your coaching philosophy. And this is where we need to talk about Shedeur specifically, because his name keeps coming up in these discussions whether people want to admit it or not. There's been reporting that suggests John Harbaugh actually wanted to draft Shedeur to Baltimore. Some sources claim there were back-channel conversations that prevented it from happening. The story goes that Shedeur didn't want to be a backup, that he wanted a clear path to starting, and that he allegedly turned down the opportunity to learn behind Lamar Jackson. Now, you can respect that decision or question it, but the point is this relationship between Harbaugh and Shedeur has history, or at least the potential for history that never materialized. So why wouldn't Harbaugh want to reunite with a quarterback he supposedly valued highly enough to consider drafting? That's the question that makes this whole situation so complicated. Because if Harbaugh genuinely believed in Shedeur's talent, wouldn't Cleveland be more attractive? Unless there's something else going on. Unless the evaluation has changed. Unless the supporting cast around Shedeur is so concerning that even a Hall of Fame coach doesn't want to stake his legacy on fixing it. Mary Kay mentioned something else in her radio interview that's worth examining closely. She talked about Tommy Rees, Cleveland's offensive coordinator, and said something very specific. She said that the intriguing thing about Rees is that he has more intimate knowledge about Shedeur Sanders than any other coaching candidate, that he can tell the organization exactly what they need to know about whether Shedeur can be their franchise guy or not. Stop and think about what that statement implies. It implies that every coaching candidate coming through Cleveland is being asked point blank whether they can win with Shedeur as their quarterback. It implies that this is a major decision point in the interview process. It implies that some candidates, like apparently John Harbaugh, are answering that question with enough hesitation that they don't even want to continue the conversation. And it implies that Tommy Rees, who's worked with Shedeur all season, who's called plays for him, who's seen him in practice and film sessions and games, has information that could determine the entire direction of this franchise. From what we've seen on the field, Shedeur has shown flashes. He's shown composure under pressure. He's shown the ability to make NFL throws. He's also been working behind one of the worst offensive lines in football with limited weapons in an offense that's been described as putrid by multiple analysts. Two things can be true at the same time. Shedeur can have legitimate talent and potential while also being in a situation that's set up for failure. That's not making excuses. That's acknowledging context. But here's what makes John Harbaugh's rejection so interesting when you really break it down. Harbaugh built his career in Baltimore with a very specific offensive philosophy. Run-heavy, physical, old-school football. He won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, who is essentially a game manager with a cannon arm for deep shots. His current quarterback is Lamar Jackson, an elite runner who operates in a system designed around the run game. The Ravens' identity for the past decade-plus has been smash-mouth football with creative quarterback runs mixed in. Now think about what type of quarterback Shedeur Sanders is. He's a pocket passer, he's a rhythm thrower. He processes information quickly and gets the ball out fast. He's not a run-first guy. He's not someone you're going to build an offense around designed quarterback runs. His game is timing routes, quick decisions, anticipation throws. That's the complete opposite of what John Harbaugh has built his coaching reputation on. So maybe, and this is just connecting the dots based on what we know about both parties, maybe Harbaugh looked at Cleveland's commitment to Shedeur and realized this isn't a scheme fit. Maybe he recognized that to be successful with Shedeur, he'd have to completely change his offensive philosophy. And at 62 years old, with a Hall of Fame resume already built, why would he do that? Why would he tear down everything that's made him successful to accommodate a rookie quarterback in one of the most dysfunctional organizations in sports? That's not an insult to Shedeur's talent. That's just a reality check about coaching philosophies and system fits. And from that perspective, maybe Harbaugh turning down Cleveland before even having a formal conversation is actually him being honest about what he knows he can and can't do. Maybe he's self-aware enough to recognize that developing a young pocket passer in a timing-based offense isn't his strength, and he's not going to waste everyone's time pretending otherwise. But let's flip this around for a second, because there's another angle here that nobody seems to be discussing. What if John Harbaugh rejecting Cleveland is actually the best thing that could happen for Shedeur Sanders? What if dodging this particular coaching hire is a blessing in disguise? Think about it from Shedeur's perspective. Do you want to play for a coach who has to be convinced to take the job? Do you want a coach who's skeptical about your abilities before even meeting you? Do you want someone running your offense who spent his entire career doing the exact opposite of what your skill set requires? Or would you rather have a coach who's excited about your potential, who sees you as the foundation to build around, who's willing to design an offense that maximizes your strengths instead of forcing you into a system that doesn't fit? From that angle, Cleveland not landing Harbaugh might actually open the door for a better match. Someone like Tommy Rees, who's already built a relationship with Shedeur, who understands his game, who's been preparing him all season. Or someone like Mike McDaniel, who just got fired by Miami and has a proven track record of developing quarterbacks and running creative offenses. And speaking of McDaniel, multiple analysts have mentioned him as a potential option for Cleveland. The same coach who took Tua, a quarterback many people had written off, and turned him into an MVP candidate. The same offensive mind who put up historic numbers with the Dolphins. He's suddenly available because Miami fired him to chase Harbaugh. What's McDaniel's offense built on? Quick passes, rhythm throws, getting playmakers in space, motion, misdirection, creating easy completions. That sounds a lot like what Shedeur does best, doesn't it? So while everyone's treating Harbaugh's rejection like it's some massive failure for Cleveland, maybe it's actually steering them toward a better fit. Maybe it's forcing the organization to look at offensive-minded coaches who specialize in quarterback development instead of defensive-minded coaches who want to build around the run game. Maybe this rejection is the wake-up call that pushes Cleveland in a direction that actually makes sense for their young quarterback. But we can't ignore the elephant in the room here. The real reason elite coaches are avoiding Cleveland has nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. It has everything to do with Jimmy Haslam. This is the same owner who's created such a toxic environment that Hall of Fame caliber coaches won't even take a meeting. The same owner who's hired and fired so many coaches that the position has become a career graveyard. The same owner who signed off on the Deshaun Watson trade that's handicapped this franchise for years. Mary Kay said it herself in that radio interview. The Browns are so concerned about public embarrassment that they're not even offering interviews to candidates they know will decline. That's not a quarterback problem. That's not a roster problem. That's an ownership and organizational culture problem. When your franchise has such a bad reputation that you're afraid to even make offers because you know you'll be rejected, that's a crisis that goes way beyond who's under center. The Dolphins fired their coach to pursue Harbaugh. The Giants are rolling out the red carpet. Multiple teams are making aggressive moves. But Cleveland can't even get a response. And somehow Shedeur Sanders is supposed to be the scapegoat for that? That doesn't add up. That's not fair. That's the media and fan base looking for an easy explanation when the real problems run much deeper. From what we've seen in locker room dynamics and player interviews, Shedeur has handled this situation with maturity. He's stayed focused. He's worked with the coaches he has. He's not complained publicly. He's not demanded trades or thrown teammates under the bus. For a rookie dealing with the pressure of being a high-profile quarterback in a struggling organization, that's impressive. That shows mental toughness. That shows the kind of character you want in a franchise quarterback. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable to talk about. Because based on the timeline and the reactions we're seeing, it sure looks like some people in NFL coaching circles have already made up their minds about Shedeur before giving him a real chance. Whether that's fair or not is debatable. Whether it's based on legitimate evaluation or preconceived notions is impossible to know from the outside. But the pattern is there. High-profile coaching candidates are passing on Cleveland, and the Shedeur factor keeps coming up in these discussions. There's also the day-in factor that we can't ignore. Shedeur's father is one of the most famous athletes in American history. He's outspoken, he's protective of his son. He comes with media attention and opinions that not every coach wants to deal with. Some analysts have suggested that the family dynamics around Shedeur are part of what's making coaching candidates hesitate. They don't want to deal with the external noise. They don't want day-in's voice in their ear. They don't want the circus that sometimes follows high-profile families. Is that fair to Shedeur? Absolutely not. He can't control who his father is. He can't control the media attention that comes with his last name. All he can control is his work ethic, his preparation, and his performance. And from what we've seen, he's done everything asked of him. But in the NFL, perception matters. And if coaching candidates perceive the Shedeur situation as coming with baggage, whether justified or not, that's going to impact their decision-making. The discussion around Jim Schwartz is also worth examining. He's Cleveland's defensive coordinator, and from media reports, he really wants the head coaching job. He's been auditioning all season. He's animated on the sidelines. He's coached his unit well. He wants another shot at being a head coach. But Schwartz is a defensive guy, and Cleveland's biggest problem isn't defense, it's offense. It's quarterback development. It's putting points on the board. So if Cleveland hires Schwartz, what does that say about their commitment to developing Shedeur? Does it signal that they're going to try to win with defense and running the ball while hopping Shedeur manages the game? Is that really the best path forward for a young quarterback who needs reps and development? Or does it show that the organization is making decisions based on who wants the job rather than who's the best fit for their quarterback's development? These are uncomfortable questions that don't have easy answers, but they need to be asked, because the decisions Cleveland makes in this coaching search are going to determine Shedeur's entire trajectory. If they hire the wrong coach, if they put him in the wrong system, if they don't give him the support and development he needs, they could waste his potential. And then in 3 years when he's struggling and they're moving on to another quarterback, everyone will blame Shedeur for not panning out when the real issue was organizational dysfunction. Let's talk about Tommy Rees again because his name keeps coming up as a serious candidate. Rees has been with Shedeur all season. He's called plays for him. He's worked with him in practice. He knows his strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. And according to Mary Kay's reporting, he has intimate knowledge that could answer whether Shedeur can be Cleveland's franchise quarterback or not. That's a powerful position to be in. If Rees comes out of this process and tells ownership that Shedeur has legitimate franchise potential, that he just needs the right system and development, that could change everything. It could give Cleveland the confidence to build around him. It could lead to them hearing an offensive-minded coach or promoting Rees himself. It could result in draft picks and free agent signings designed to support a young quarterback. But if Rees has doubts, if he's seen things in practice or film sessions that concern him, that could push Cleveland in a completely different direction. The fact that we don't know Rees's evaluation yet is what makes this so fascinating. We're all speculating based on external observations, but Rees has the inside information. He has the data, he has the film, he has the conversations and the classroom work and the practice reps. His opinion, more than anyone else's, should matter in this decision. And from what's been reported, Cleveland is taking his input very seriously. But here's what bothers me about this whole situation. Why is it all on Shedeur to prove himself when the organization around him has failed at developing quarterbacks for decades? Why is he the one who has to convince elite coaches to take a chance when those same coaches are running away from Jimmy Haslam's leadership? Why is a rookie quarterback being held responsible for dysfunction that existed long before he arrived? The Browns have gone through Baker Mayfield, who showed promise and then regressed. They traded for Deshaun Watson in one of the worst decisions in NFL history. They've cycled through countless quarterbacks and none of them have succeeded long-term. At what point do we acknowledge that maybe the problem isn't the players? Maybe the problem is the system. Maybe the problem is an organization that doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks or build sustainable success. Shedeur walked into a situation where the offensive line is a mess, where the weapons are limited, where the play calling has been questioned, where the locker room dynamics are complicated by the Watson contract. And somehow he's supposed to overcome all of that in his first season while also convincing Hall of Fame coaches that he's worth building around? That's an impossible standard. From the film we've seen, Shedeur has shown the ability to read defenses. He's shown pocket presence. He's shown accuracy on timing routes. He's also taken sacks because the line can't protect him. He's missed throws because he doesn't have chemistry with receivers who aren't getting separation. He's operated in an offense that hasn't put him in position to succeed consistently. Those are two different evaluations. His individual talent versus the situation around him. And they both matter. What's interesting is how different media members are reacting to this Harbaugh situation. Some are framing it as Harbaugh being smart for avoiding a disaster. Others are framing it as Cleveland being a laughingstock that can't attract talent. Very few are asking whether Harbaugh would actually be a good fit for what Cleveland needs right now. Very few are questioning whether a defensive-minded coach with a run-first philosophy is really what a young pocket passer needs for development. The narrative has become about rejection and embarrassment rather than about scheme fit and organizational direction. And that narrative is doing a disservice to everyone involved. It's making Harbaugh look like he's running from a challenge when he might just be making a smart decision about system compatibility. It's making Cleveland look desperate when they might actually be better off pursuing a different type of coach. And it's making Shedeur look like a liability when he might just need a coach who believes in his style of play. There's also the timing element that's worth considering. The coaching carousel moves fast. Candidates are having conversations with multiple teams simultaneously. Teams are making decisions based on incomplete information and gut feelings. Harbaugh has options. He can be selective. He can wait for the perfect situation. Cleveland doesn't have that luxury. They need to hire someone and they need to do it relatively quickly. That power dynamic changes everything. When you have leverage, when you're the sought-after candidate, you can afford to be picky. You can turn down situations that aren't perfect. You can wait for a better offer. Harbaugh has that leverage right now. Every team wants him. He can essentially write his own ticket. So why would he choose the most difficult situation when easier paths to success exist? From a pure career standpoint, it makes sense to avoid Cleveland even if Shedeur wasn't a factor. But Shedeur is a factor. His name is attached to this situation whether fair or not. And the perception among some coaching candidates seems to be that building around him comes with challenges that outweigh the potential rewards. Maybe that perception changes if Cleveland puts better pieces around him. Maybe it changes if they fix the offensive line. Maybe it changes if they bring in weapons and create a supporting cast that makes the job easier. But right now, in this moment, the perception is working against him. The fan reactions to all of this have been fascinating to watch. Some Browns fans are devastated that Harbaugh won't even consider them. They see it as another embarrassment in a long line of organizational failures. Other fans are actually relieved, arguing that Harbaugh's style wouldn't fit with Shedeur anyway, and that they need to find a coach who specializes in offense. And then there's a third group that's given up entirely, convinced that nothing will change until Haslam sells the team. All three of those reactions are understandable. This franchise has put its fans through decades of disappointment. They've seen every possible way to fail. They've watched other teams build sustainable success while Cleveland cycles through coaches and quarterbacks and front office executives. They're tired, they're frustrated, and now they're watching a Hall of Fame coach reject them without even a formal conversation. That hurts. That reinforces every negative belief they have about their organization. But here's something that keeps getting lost in all the drama and speculation. Shedeur Sanders is still just getting started. This is his first season. He's learning the professional game. He's adjusting to NFL speed and NFL defenses and NFL pressure. Very few quarterbacks come into this league and dominate immediately. Most of them struggle. Most of them need time and development and patience. The ones who succeed usually have good coaching, good supporting casts, and organizational stability. Shedeur doesn't have any of that right now. So before we make sweeping judgments about whether he can be a franchise quarterback, before we use coaching candidates avoiding Cleveland as proof that he's not the answer, maybe we should acknowledge that he's been set up to fail. Maybe we should recognize that his situation is uniquely difficult. Maybe we should give him an actual chance with actual support before writing him off. The Tommy Rees angle keeps coming back because it might be the most logical solution. Rees knows Shedeur. Shedeur knows Rees. There's already a relationship there. There's already familiarity with terminology and concepts. Promoting from within could provide continuity that Shedeur needs. It could allow him to focus on improving rather than learning an entirely new system. It could give him a coach who's already invested in his development. But promoting Rees also comes with risks. He's never been a head coach. He doesn't have experience managing an entire organization. He'd be learning on the job just like Shedeur. And if it doesn't work, Cleveland would be right back in this position in 2 years looking for another coach. That's the gamble: stability versus proven success, familiarity versus experience. What's become clear through all the media coverage and analyst discussion is that Cleveland is in an impossible position. They need a coach who can develop a young quarterback. They need someone who believes in Shedeur's potential. They need an offensive mind who can design a system around his strengths. But they also need someone with enough credibility and experience to handle the pressure and dysfunction of this organization. Finding all of that in one candidate who actually wants the job is nearly impossible. And that's why John Harbaugh's rejection stings so much. He's the rare coach who has the resume, the credibility, the experience, and the track record. Losing out on him before even getting a chance to make a pitch reinforces the idea that Cleveland can't compete for elite talent, that they're stuck settling for second or third tier options while other franchises get first choice. But maybe settling isn't the right word. Maybe finding the right fit is more important than landing the biggest name. Maybe a young offensive coordinator who's hungry to prove himself would be better for Shedeur than an established coach who's set in his ways. Maybe Mike McDaniel, who's looking for a fresh start after Miami, would bring exactly the creativity and quarterback development that Cleveland needs. Maybe Jim Schwartz could surprise everyone by hiring an elite offensive coordinator and letting him run that side of the ball. The possibilities are still there, the options haven't disappeared, but the perception has shifted, the narrative has changed, and now Cleveland has to figure out how to move forward while everyone's talking about who doesn't want to be there rather than who does. This whole situation raises questions that won't be answered anytime soon. Is Shedeur Sanders really the reason elite coaches are avoiding Cleveland? Or is he just convenient cover for organizational problems that run much deeper? Would John Harbaugh actually be a good fit for developing a young pocket passer? Or would his run-first philosophy clash with Shedeur's skill set? Is Tommy Rees the answer? Is Mike McDaniel? Is someone we haven't even considered yet? What happens next is going to determine everything. Cleveland's coaching decision will shape Shedeur's career trajectory. It will impact how he's evaluated going forward. It will decide whether he gets a legitimate chance to succeed or whether he's another quarterback sacrificed to organizational dysfunction. And right now, with John Harbaugh walking away without even a conversation, with the media questioning Shedeur's viability, with fans divided on what direction to take, the future feels more uncertain than ever.